Howdy folks, welcome to another episode of It Came From Marketplace. Today we're looking at used Triumph motorcycles. Now, Triumph is a brand that has been making lots of waves over the last 5, 6, 7 years. They've been coming out with new models, doing a lot of cool stuff. And we're going to see in today's video if that's caused a depreciation issue with these motorcycles. What's a good buy, what's not a good buy, what's happening with certain models. And I thought no better place to start than the humble Triumph Tiger Sport 660, going for $5,799, listed with 3,772 miles. Now, this is a bike I rode and reviewed, really liked it, thought it was a Versys 650 with a little bit more energy, a little bit more panache. The original MSRP on this bike was actually $9,495. Now, that is approaching CF Moto levels of depreciation in just 3 years. This motorcycle is basically halved in value. The other crazy part is this bike's actually being listed at a dealership. This is local to me here, TJ Cycles. They do a little bit of Triumph and used bike sales over there. And so the listing description is pretty vanilla. It's just telling you about the class-leading performance and the specification, the triple cylinder, and just giving you some pretty easy stuff. So this is probably a trade-in, right? And there really is nothing wrong with a trade-in motorcycle at a dealership. I think especially when the price is this aggressive, they really want to get this bike sold. Now you might say, "Yan, why is this motorcycle being sold at such a competitive price?" Well, I think that Triumph kind of did this to themselves because they launched the Tiger Sport 800. The Tiger Sport 800 is a fantastic motorcycle, and I think a lot of the people who would have wanted to get the Tiger Sport 660, well, they look at the 800 and they say, well, I think I can handle something like that, because the 800 is just a little bit more grown up, it's a little bit bigger, and fits the bill for what a lot of people are looking for. But at this point now, this 660 might be one of the best buys in that kind of entry-ish level sport touring motorcycle, because this bike would be a fantastic commuter bike. This would make a great second motorcycle for someone who wants something to bomb around to the office and back, hit up a long-distance ride. This one also comes equipped with a nice little, I think that's a Zart or Zarp exhaust. I can't quite read it there, but I've heard of that brand before, specifically for the 660 platform. So you get 3-cylinder charm, a motorcycle that clearly was not ridden super aggressively. You can see that's the stock tire on there, the Michelin Road 6s or 5s. I don't remember which one this is from this tire pattern, but big, fat, wide chicken strips. This motorcycle was used primarily on the highway, it seems. Just a nice, easygoing bike. And other than the exhaust, it looks totally stock, totally clean. And so this is a bargain, man. Honestly, a bike like this going for almost $4,000 off the MSRP. And really, from all I can really gather, the only reason this would be so cheap is because of the new Tiger Sport 800. And because this motorcycle, let's be honest, it doesn't have the kind of strong curb appeal that a sport bike or a classic motorcycle from Triumph has. And so it kind of sits in that more utilitarian category, which is always going to make it kind of further down in price. But honestly, this is a fantastic pickup. Again, if you're looking for a commuter, something simple like this, keep an eye out for these Tiger Sport 660, because apparently they're going for pennies on the dollar. And this is a well-built motorcycle. The 660 platform has proven itself to be very reliable, very robust, and it's from a reputable brand like Triumph. All right, next up might be one of the hardest absolute value depreciations I have seen in this market. This is a 2021 Triumph Rocket 3R. Now, the 3R implies that the foot control is a little bit more mid-mounted, so this is the sportier version of the Triumph Rocket 3. This motorcycle was also listed at a dealership. A lot of these motorcycles I found today are not private sellers, they're actually on dealerships, and this one is crazy because the original MSRP on this bike was $23,895. This is actually very similar to the Triumph Rocket 3 we reviewed here on the channel, and they haven't changed a whole lot in the last 4 or 5 years. They didn't do a big update or anything like that. So this is the new 2500cc inline 4, making 165 horsepower, 163 foot-pounds of torque. It, from what I can tell, is basically bone stock. This is an absolute battleship of a motorcycle. It weighs, I think, over 700 pounds. Again, 2500cc motorcycle, a 240 section rear tire. You guys can see how big and beefy this thing is. But truthfully, it is shocking to me that this bike was listed at a dealership for $11,000 with only 6,500 miles, maybe 4 or 5 years used. It's really not that used to have such a cataclysmic drop off for price. Now, the only thing I could think of that makes heads or tails of why this price came down so much is that guys that buy Rocket 3, I guess they just roll up to the dealership and they buy them brand new. I could see, some 50, 60-year-old guy, he's like, I'm going to go in there, write a check, and I want to walk away with the baddest motorcycle the Triumph makes. And they're extremely niche products. I mean, let's call a spade a spade. A Triumph Rocket 3 is the type of bike that is really not for everybody. This is a motorcycle that a very specific type of cruiser looking squid is looking to get. The muscle cruiser to end all muscle cruisers, right? Perhaps you've owned a VMAX, perhaps you've owned a Diopol, and now the only thing that can satisfy you is a Triumph Rocket 3. But I'm going to be totally honest. At $10,999, I'm interested in a Rocket 3 at that point, because I'm like, okay, I didn't realize they were so cheap or going for that kind of money in the used market. It is extremely tantalizing because this one, again, it looks completely stock, completely clean. It just looks like it has, a bit of wear and tear from literally just riding on the road, but everything else looks extremely clean on this motorcycle. I can't really find a fault on this thing. Everything looks straightforward. Everything looks clean. So Rocket 3 might be the new king of depreciation. That is pretty crazy. Now, reliability reports on these, as far as I know, I haven't heard of anything really with these. This is a bespoke engine that Triumph uses on this machine. It is thought of as kind of like their flagship bike. So I think they put a lot of pride and care into these machines. And I believe they're still built at the Hinckley factory. They're not being built overseas. I think this is definitely one of those bikes that they have a lot of pride in. So, at 11 grand, the Triumph might be the one to get. This Rocket 3, pretty impressive on that depreciation. Pretty staggering, I'm not going to lie. If you guys have any inklings on why you think it's dropped so much, you let me know. Next up, a 2020 Triumph Street Triple RS with the 765cc motor going for $6,500 with 10,458 miles on the clock. Right off the bat, I'm seeing a couple squid mods. We have like a yellowed out headlight, which is kind of interesting. This paint scheme was only offered for a few years. This kind of like acid yellow black colorway. Kind of interesting. I don't think it's aged super well, but it's still pretty good. This is a private seller, and this guy says, never dropped, selling my 2020 Triumph Street Triple RS. I just don't ride it enough anymore to justify paying the insurance. Has been garage kept its entire life. I've owned it, and I've had all the service done at Ride Now Austin with their Triumph technician. Lots of tasteful mods listed below. I did not include them because it was a mile long. Current mileage at 10,458 will not be going up. Comes with 2 keys, no test rides without cash in hand. Now, originally, this bike's MSRP was $12,995. The RS trim for the Street Triple is the highest specification. This motorcycle received quite a big, kind of quiet update. I think for the 23 or 24 model year, lots of internals were changed, lots of things updated, making a peak like 128 horsepower. We had a Cosmic Yellow 765 RS that we featured here on the channel as a giveaway bike at the back end of 2024. I loved that motorcycle. I think it really is one of the absolute best street and track oriented bikes. Truly a 50-50 street track bike. So nice, so refined. And of course, I'm biased. I own a Daytona. I think these are some of the best handling frames and best motorcycles ever made. So sue me. You're watching my channel. You come here for my opinions. It is what it is. So $6,500. We're talking half off. It makes sense, right? This is a now 6-year-old motorcycle with 10,000 miles. So that depreciation makes sense to me, right? It makes sense in my brain. We talked a lot on the CF Moto video where, a bike that's 2 years old with 1,000 miles that's had half of its MSRP, that doesn't make sense to me, right? Because an equivalent Kawasaki Ninja 500 or something like that, being a year or two old with 1,000 miles, it would not be half off. But this Triumph, 6 years old, some mileage, some mods, some, a little bit of squid energy put into it a little bit, it's going to be half off. I think that's really fair. That's a fair price to me. So looking at the back half, seller's done tail tidy. He's got tank grips. He's got some, little farkles here and there, but nothing egregious. These are all what I would consider more adult, grown-up, mature mods that you would do. Perhaps this quilted comfort seat that this gentleman wanted. Maybe he was commuting with the bike and he wanted something more comfortable. Tank grips, these are the exact tank grips I always put on my bike, so I can't really fault him for that. Tank grips are wonderful to have on your motorcycle. Radiator guard, also a great thing to have, but I'm seeing, this is, I guess, I don't know if this is an underglow system he has on the bike or if he's got like a giant light flashing on it. It appears to be some sort of underglow system. I'm not really sure why I included that photo. It's a bit odd. But overall, a reasonably tasteful bike. I don't remember on the tread pattern what these are, but I think that's a cheaper grade of tire. I could do without the yellowed out headlights. I think, a word of caution to those of you who are owning your bikes and having fun with them. Doing these mods, not only will it cost you money, but then it will cost you on the resale side too. If this bike was a little bit more stock, I think you would have a easier time selling it closer to what he would like. You can maybe even get $7,000 or $8,000 if this bike was a little more stock. So not only did he spend money on the mods, but then he also lost on the resale side of it too a little bit. But hey, if you had fun and enjoyed the bike, that's all that matters. So street triples are really coming down in price. I really think that this is a good pickup. Triumph has been making these for a long time, and they've got them pretty much sorted. There's really nothing too new that they're doing on these. So I would say target that kind of like 2021, 2022 model year. If you can find the updated one, I can't remember if it was 23 or 24 where they changed a lot of the stuff, but those would definitely be the ones I would get personally. We may see a new Street Triple 800 or something like that. God forbid they put that 800 motor in here, because the 765 mil truly is special. It's one of the last real race-derived middleweight motorcycles. It is not a naked bike first. The Street Triple was always built on a super sport platform, which is really sweet. Moving on. I know some of you have been clamoring to know, Yam, who won the Honda Hornet 750? Well, this is a cool story. Braden in Houston actually won it, and I was able to do a hand delivery to him. Check it out.
Yeah, well, congratulations. I'm really excited for you on this bike. Delivered here in the Houston area. You said you're heading off to the Marines, though, right? So you may not keep the bike?
Yeah, maybe not. Probably not.
Okay, probably.
June or July, I'm going to leave, I believe.
Yeah, well, at least it'll be here in a good home. And, well, if you see it come up for sale, maybe you pick it up from Braden over here. But hopefully you get a chance to ride a little bit, have some fun, and big congrats to Braden over here.
So big congrats to Braden on winning the Honda Hornet 750. This Moto Guzzi is up for grabs over on yamany.co. Go and click the link down below and make sure you're entered as a member for your best chance to win. All right, we couldn't do a Triumph video without talking about Thruxtons, Bonnevilles, because these are absolutely like the cream of the crop and just like what you're going to see a lot of in the used marketplace when it comes to Triumph. So this is a 2016 Triumph Thruxton R going for $9,300 with 6,556 miles on it. First of all, can we just take a moment and just gawk at this machine? The Thruxton R is so pretty. It's so nice to look at. The shape of the tail, the wire-spoked wheels, the cafe racer aesthetic. I just love the way these bikes look. I don't like riding them. We actually had a Thruxton RS here on the channel, I think in 2022, that we did a ride and review and several videos with, and I loved looking at it, but I didn't like riding it, and that's such a shame. I would really love a Thruxton with handlebars, maybe a speed twin Thruxton type of thing. I know a Thruxton is more of that cafe vibe, but the silver, chrome, shiny, oh, it's so good. Okay, seller says, a lot of stuff about cash only, no trades. Selling my 2016 Triumph Thruxton. The bike has a clean title, beautiful, garage kept, and well taken care of. I would agree. The owner before me lowered the bike 1 inch, also replacing the rear springs with shorter black Olin springs. Okay, so it seems like the previous owner would have replaced, to change the ride height on these, you simply, I guess, add in a shorter shock, right? And that's actually a pretty easy mod to do. These have the old school dual style shocks at the back. So really all you need to do is just 2 bolts, pop a new one in, and you can probably get the ride height back to normal. I personally really hate riding lowered motorcycles. It compromises the geometry and the handling, and the bikes never feel quite right. So the seller also included a mile-long list of modifications I just didn't want to include on here. I can see that he's got, a little lever guards and an exhaust. So let's kind of just take some look at these photos. Seller used a very nice DSLR camera with some beautiful depth of field, an ND filter on this perhaps to get that wonderful washed out look in the rear. And it's hard to find a bad angle of this thing. Such a beautiful classic shape, wouldn't you say? Such a good looking motorcycle. The 2016 Thruxton R, I believe this uses the 1200 Bonneville engine in it, but this is the prior generation. They made some changes somewhere along the way in 2018 or 19, I think, to the reliability of this and just made it a little bit better. But when taken care of, these will run really, really well. So we see we got the license plate kind of turned around over here. Don't you want to just jump on this thing with one of those old school retro helmets, a leather jacket, and just go cruise around, man? Like, this is, I feel like, the most Austin, Texas coated motorcycle. You see these a dime a dozen, but they are really, really lovely. I have to admit, you know. I think this quilted seat is not stock. And then we do have the Öhlins shock at the rear. This is the different one that he put on that's a bit shorter, but I think these came shipped with Öhlins from the factory. Öhlins steering damper, which is nice too. Nice to see. The absolutely beautiful analog gauges. I mean, look at that. Does it get any better than that? I don't think so. The beautiful jewel-like character, these analog gauges, man. Come on, bring it back. So nice to look at. Got the lever guards right here, all that good stuff. So let's talk a little bit about depreciation, pricing, all that sort of thing. So $14,500 is the original price on this. So we're looking at $9,300 for this. So you can tell these don't depreciate very much because they're still sought after, they're still nice, and even more so because Triumph isn't making the actual big Thruxton anymore. So because they're not making the big Thruxton anymore, these all of a sudden have a little bit more staying power in the market. So yeah, I think it's worth every bit of around $9,000. It's a beautiful motorcycle, really cool. Just a classic, beautiful shack. Man, I can't do these videos because like I start wanting to buy these bikes. I want that Rocket 3. I want this Thruxton R. It's so difficult to, to do this and not get so hyped up on these bikes. But yeah, this one's a great pickup. Nice price, nice bike. Moving on. All right, let's move on to one that maybe isn't a great pickup and has a classic thing that I want to talk to you guys about. This is a 2005 Triumph Daytona going for $3,000 with 27,000 miles. Now, this is the mid-2000s Daytona 650 before Triumph turned this into a 3-cylinder in 2006. That was the first Triumph Daytona 675. And that was really, for me, the start of the real Daytona. I don't really consider these, I know this is going to sound really crappy to me, these are not real Daytonas. They have 4-cylinder engines. I think the styling has not aged well at all on these. They're not collector's items. I think they're just, unfortunately, going to be relegated to the dustbin of history. So this seller says, 2005 Triumph Daytona 650, rare inline 4, only made for 2 years, runs and rides, title in hand, not fully transferred to me. Huge red flag. Huge issue on there. If you have a vehicle and the title is not in your name, you don't own that vehicle. You trying to sell a vehicle when the title isn't in your name is what's called a jumped title. You have to assign ownership of the title and the vehicle to yourself. You got to go to the DMV. You got to pay the taxes. You got to transfer. You got to pay the fees and get that title in your name. If your name is not on that title, you can't sell that bike unless you're going to sell it to someone else who doesn't care about the title, but then they don't own the bike. And then all of a sudden you have one of these situations where nobody knows who owns the bike and the title, and it just becomes really, really messy. So on that alone, you shouldn't buy this bike, but it gets worse. Issues fully disclosed. Needs fairings, slight oil leak, trouble staying on at low RPMs. When coming to a stop, needs to be put in neutral and slightly revved to prevent stalling. That sounds like regulator rectifier issues to me. Always starts right back up from what I've researched. It's likely an easy fix, common to this year model, but I don't have the time for it. So I love this too. Sellers often say, oh, it's an easy fix, but I don't have time for it. Well, if it's so easy, then you do it, and then you sell it. Why are you trying to sell something if you're telling me it's so easy, right? So, like, so many red flags on this, right? And let's just be honest, a 21-year-old Daytona with 27,000 miles on it going for $3,000 that is a borderline project bike with a jumped title. So many red flags. Do not purchase this motorcycle. The original MSRP was $6,500. Not that it matters. It was 21 years ago. You know, it's almost like impossible to even think about something like that in terms of MSRP. The inflation alone on that. Anyways, let's take a look at some other photos. Classic, of course, to this type of listing. You're taking photos far away from the bike in low resolution. Similar story here. far away, low resolution, in front of the Jack in the Box. You know, he's got his bike, he's got his home, he's just sitting there. I don't know if he just got himself some lunch at the Jack in the Box, came across the street and just took the photo, photo of the bike in some sort of parking lot. Again, poorly lit, can't really see what's going on. And just the face of this motorcycle, like I said, this bike, unfortunately, has just not aged very well at all. I say that as a big Triumph fan. This is a heinous looking motorcycle. It looks really stupid. I'm not going to lie. Like the tiny little face and the eyes, not a good look on this bike. So mid 2000s Daytona, hard pass, jump title, hard pass. This poor blinker is just sitting on the side over here. Snapped lever. This motorcycle was definitely dropped on this side over here. You can see that. Don't buy this bike. All right, this one I thought was interesting. 2011 Triumph Rocket for $3,500 with 22,000 miles. This is an OG Triumph Rocket. This is the big dog that this bike was so cantankerous and rowdy and absolutely just wanted to kill you every time you rode it. So, seller says, selling my 2011 Triumph Rocket 3 Roadster. Bike starts easily, runs strong, and rides, but has a known second gear issue that's common on Rocket 3s. The price reflects this. About the issue, full transparency, second gear can slip/pop under load. All other gears operate normally. Bike is rideable and has been ridden as is, likely shift dog wear, well-documented Rocket 3 issue. The original MSRP for this bike was $16,999 back in 2011. Is that a complete deal breaker? It depends on the type of buyer you are, right? As long as this guy has the title in hand that is in his name, unlike the previous seller, if you know about this issue and truthfully, does a Rocket 3 need second gear? You could probably just shift up into third and probably just keep going. Is that ideal? No, not really. But for $3,500, if you know how to fix something like that, I would say go for it. Here's the issue though. Transmission problems are almost always catastrophic on a motorcycle because the way motorcycle engines work is the transmission and the engine are pretty much inseparable. They share the same oil. They're all in the same thing, usually in the same case. And, it's not like a car where the transmission's totally separate from the engine. So whenever you have transmission issues on a bike, I know it sounds crazy, but the more common thing people do is just to swap the entire engine, because it's easier than literally cracking the whole thing open, going down all the way to the whatever tooth is messed up, swapping out that tooth, putting it all back together, and then putting it back in. It's usually easier to just pull the whole engine, put a whole new engine in, and call it a day. So if you have a spare Rocket 3 engine lying around, maybe this is a good pickup for you. Because this thing, okay, we have a super far away image over here. I'm not sure why. It honestly looks like it's in halfway decent shape. Again, this OG Rocket 3 is a handful of a motorcycle. This doesn't have any modern traction control, any kind of like rider aids, and this thing had a 2300cc 3-cylinder. So this is definitely a King Kong motorcycle. You gotta know what you're doing if you're gonna ride this thing. But yeah, if you want to live with that second gear issue, or if you have a spare Rocket 3 engine lying around, maybe not the worst pick in the world. But I think for most normal humans, that other Rocket 3 was a fantastic pickup. This one, not so much. Moving on. Okay, next up is a 2020 Triumph Speed Twin going for $8,250 with 5,200 miles. So I mentioned that this sort of motorcycle is bread and butter for the used Triumph market. You will see probably in your local area something like this all over the place. Now, 2020 is when they already did a lot of those changes that I talked about in this platform. They updated it, and these are pretty much bulletproof. You're not going to have too many issues with these. Seller says 2020 Triumph Speed Twin, less than 1,000 miles on Michelin Road 6 front and rear. That's nice to have brand new tires on it. The original MSRP was $10,500, so we haven't seen too much depreciation on this. All right, last but not least, I wanted to talk about this one, man. I left the ADV bike for the end, but this is very tantalizing as well. We have a 2023 Triumph Tiger 1200 GT Explorer listed at $13,499. I need you guys to understand, this motorcycle's original MSRP was $23,425. This is listed at a dealership, so that's why the listing description is a bit, boilerplate. This has 7,000 miles on it, which is really nothing for a long distance adventure style motorcycle. To get this bike for 10 grand off its MSRP is crazy. That's a lot of motorcycle for $13,499. I had the chance to ride and review one of these Triumph Tiger 1200s. And this is every bit of a kind of like ultra long distance, world conquering, do everything motorcycle that a BMW GS is. This one doesn't have the big 21-inch wheel setup, but honestly, this is the type of bike that I think would work much better for its intended purpose rather than trying to get something with a big 21-inch front wheel, more off-road capability. This is a little more honest in what it's trying to be and trying to do. And this was the updated version of the Tiger 1200. So this has got all the bells and whistles, man. Like, this is only a 3-year-old motorcycle, so this has all kinds of bells and whistles, all kinds of great stuff. The Brembo brakes, the remote suspension, the seat warmers, baby. You got seat warmers. This gentleman also put on the little netted thing for long distance. So maybe this was someone that bought the bike and then enjoyed it for, a big trip or something like that, and then sold it, So shaft drive, very easy to live with. The 1200s, I think, are super slept on. So big 3-cylinder, I think they make like 140 or 150 horsepower. They really get up and move on the highway. So if you're doing 2-up, doing long distance, big commuting, this is a great motorcycle and definitely like a final finisher, flagship type of bike. And yeah, for the price, man, $13,500 for this when it was originally $23,000. As long as the dealership doesn't try to rake you over the coals, I think this is a really sweet pickup as well, too. So, the story of Triumph here, interestingly enough, I think have depreciated quite a bit. And I think that's due to the fact that some people just love buying their stuff new. I think it's also the fact that some of them is just like pricing is reflecting reality now. Like a 6-year-old motorcycle with 10,000 miles should probably be half of what it used to be. And I'm really happy to see that we are getting to the point where pricing is coming back to reality. Well, what do you guys think? Let me know down below in the comments about this Triumph situation in the used marketplace. Did you buy a used Triumph? Let me know down in the comments. Love making these videos. Love hanging out with you guys. I'll catch you on the next one. See you later.